a second.
You
Ready? Good evening. It is Wednesday, June 7th, 2023, 6 p.m. and call this meeting to order. Director McVeigh, would you lead us in the pledge, please?
Be happy to. Please join me in the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you.
Roll call, if everybody would introduce themselves, please.
Terry Lincoln, Scott McVeigh.
Pam Beaver, Beverly Fickus, Chair, and absent is Erwin Fust. Open time, so if there's anything from the community that you would like to talk about that's not on the agenda, so our agenda has the fiscal year draft budget and an ordinance 2023-08 regarding water usage rates. Do we have anybody who would like to speak? Okay, moving on. So we are going directly, consent calendar, we don't have any, and we're moving on to old business, new business, our draft budget discussion. Turn it over to General Manager, and introduce the staff. This evening we have with us General Manager Paul Kelly, Administrative Assistant Kayla Falks, and Accountant Melissa Tinney. Thank you guys.
All right, thank you, Madam Chair and members of the board and the community. This is the draft 23-24 budget for discussion. So just to remind us of the process, we had an early look at the draft budget at our last meeting. Took a little bit, some feedback, but we also were all reminding you that there were still some accounts that needed to be cleaned up. You might recall there were some admin accounts that were extraneous and hanging out there. So also the other reminder is, so this is our chance at a draft budget. Let the community and board members provide input and also let you kind of see really where we were at when we were putting this together. We've also taken some information from board members and members of the community that have provided input into this, including some of the kind of baseline items that I'll talk about. The budgets are to be considered and approved at a publicly noticed meeting and also a published public hearing. So currently we are going to be scheduling at our June 21st meeting a public hearing for the budget at 6:30 p.m. And that's also will be published in the newspaper. And so with that, I will just mention that what you have before you is I know, a fairly long memo, but I did want to make sure that we had a good explanation and understanding of where we're at and how we came to the budget. So if you don't mind, I'd like to just give a quick overview of a couple of primary things within the budget. So one is that it's much clearer, I believe, than previous budgets when you have, thanks to QuickBooks and the way that we've set things up, you've got your revenue, so your customer revenue, your water service revenue, your designated revenues, the use of reserves, which I'll explain as a new item there, and then you've got your taxes as revenue. So the other thing that in the past, there were a lot of different departments and divisions laid out, and they had wages and salary in them. So now that's all at the end. It's all, so we can see all of our payroll expenses, even though they are broken out by the different divisions and departments. And then the other major update, I believe, in this budget is that after that, you'll see there's an what I call an expense to reserves. So in the past, the district did not show or track that element of things. So there's two kinds of expense to reserves, and I'll explain it more there, but as I've tried to explain for a long time, the designated revenue, the 1081 charges that make up, or all the charges that make up $10.81, those were never supposed to be identified as operating. That was all supposed to go into those specific designated revenues, and yet we had to do some sort of machinations to get that out. The other section in designated reserves is to help both the community, the board, and staff track other reserve account puts, like the two that are specific in our rates, 4.1% of our usage rate and 1.8% of base rate. Again, not previously tracked. Now we're going to be able to, a monthly report, you're going to see those elements and things, and you'll see during the year those increase. So those just in broad sense, that's the other thing in broad sense, and I'm going to give it to the board at the end of the meeting so they can give some feedback later, but everywhere else I've worked, when we pass a budget, we don't just post this little spreadsheet thing. We always post a story or some sort of background and information on the district and how that budget was put together, some of the rationale. And so I'm going to propose we even include things like a chart that shows where our revenues come from and where our general expenses come from. And so it'll be a multi-page product. So again, I'm going to hand that to the board at the end of the meeting and then ask you to go through it. I know Chair Fickus will make sure she redlines and fixes and edits everything that's been put in. Because again, it's just been going through it and editing or updating. This is creating something new. The district does not have this in the past. But you look at Centerville and other districts, they do. On the revenue side, I want to just point out to you a couple of items. The really easy on the base rate, we know July 1, the base rate goes to $57.11. We have 2,577 accounts at that rate. We have 122 accounts that are at the 1081 rate. Again, something to put on our list for the future. Why 2,700 are not all paying the 5711? I mean, just because if you have a meter there and you say you're not using it and you now don't have to pay the base rate, that doesn't mean the expense and cost to provide the service to that meter went away. It's because you're using it. But again, that was a decision that was not dealt with in the last 218 Proposition 218 process. Something for us to look at in the future. Very easy to figure out. In April, May, when we came to you with an initial budget, we did not have an accurate estimation of the expenses at treatment, and we were using it on some projections, and we still had a rate that was sort of, a higher rate based on those higher costs per acre feet. So now that we're putting together a budget, we have a little more accurate estimate of the costs, particularly the utilities and O&M costs. And again, we'll explain it more in the next item, but in the end, that in combination with and I've checked with some of our directors on this, what should we look at as water usage revenue? So we landed on about 3,000 acre feet, or more like exactly 3,000 acre feet. So that way you can use that in your water sales side of things. So 2,000 M&I, 1,000 acre feet of irrigation at a new rate of 52 cents per HCF for domestic and 51 cents for irrigation. And again, that rate can't be changed until we do the next item for the ordinance. So that's where your revenue on that top line is calculated from, based on that. Other revenues are your water service, which is our Centerville. Designated revenues, that's our 1081, so it's identified there as revenues. But again, later in the report, you'll see that it's expensed out to reserves. And then a new section. Again, one of the things that most districts do when they're budgeting is they have what we call usually a fund balance, or a designated reserve / fund balance. And so in other words, when you do your budget, and you should always have a little bit of revenue in excess of expenses. And so what you do is you put that in your fund balance as a projected fund balance. So there's two things that you use that for. You use it for mid-year budget adjustments. In other words, hey, we need to do a mid-year budget adjustment. We got something that's going to cost us a little bit more, we think, over the next 6 months, but we don't have an offsetting revenue, so we'll take it out of this fund balance. The other thing is you can use, it's discretionary, or the board's discretion, you can use that and roll that into the coming year as a balance forward, right? In other words, you're starting your year with X amount of money available. And again, the district has money, and we're operating in the black, but it's hard to see it in our current and old systems because we didn't have that fund balance. So in the use of reserves, there's two main things for that. There's one, if you wanted to, in the future years, use your fund balance, rolling in money from past years. By the way, you may not have heard me say that, but when you're budgeting, you usually try to have fewer expenses than revenue so that you have a little money in that fund balance. You might recall the previous budget that was approved actually had a miscalculation. It was a negative budget, so again, our amendment fixed that. So in the use of reserves, the first one I have identified is the WIN Act reserves to operating. And I know this is a long, convoluted thing that's in here, but I think it needs to be explained. The WIN Act is always very complicated, but the district has had a contract since 1963 plus with the Bureau for 15,300 acre feet, and it usually had a term to it. It also had a payment cost for the infrastructure. In other words, our portion of the infrastructure cost. So when this came around, this is a conversion contract that the district signed in December of 2020. And what it did is it converted the term contract of 15,300 acre feet to a perpetual, unending contract. So once we get that all paid off and everything's complied with, we don't have to worry about renegotiating every 30 years or every 10 years or whatever else it may be.
I'm sorry to interrupt.
Yeah.
For clarification, just for anybody who happens to watch the video or what, that is only in full water allocation years, though.
That's our contract amount.
Right.
Correct. So the original WIN Act obligation started at $859,452 at the time that the district signed that contract, and it signed it by ordinance in December of 2020. In September-ish of 2021, the district met with the Bureau because between December and September, no payments had been made by the district. Again, you know those dates and why that may not have been happening, but so the district met with the Bureau, a board member and our chief plan operator, interim general manager met. They worked out a system here, and the first thing they found was that there was actually supposed to be a credit to the district, and so the district took that credit of $207,092 as a payment between December and September 20 and September of 2021, and then had $651,500 left to pay off. There was thought that the district would go get a loan to pay off all $650,000, and then the $1.88 would then pay back that loan from Mechanics Bank or whoever bank it might have been that got the loan. The district never did get a loan. There's a lot of reasons why that didn't happen, but starting last year, the district started making approximately $50,000 per quarter payments. But we did miss a few payments, and that's why those that are signing checks are seeing us try to catch up on that. So by doing that, the district has been paying and is going to pay this $651,000 basically out of operating expenses. We're paying it out of our, we could have been taking it out of reserves, we didn't have any reserves. So we're really taking it out of our operating. And so the good news is once we're done paying that, we'll actually have some money to put more money back into reserves. But what this action is doing is it's saying, because we borrowed against our operating $650,000 over a 2.5-year period, 3-year period of time, that $1.88 or the WIN Act reserve money will pay back the operating reserve fund revenue at a rate of, and right now I'm saying $50,000 a year, and it'll take 13 years to get it paid off. Hope that makes sense, but that means we'll have at least that money coming in. Yes, sir.
With the exception of the amounts that have been collected in the discretionary reserves, the approximate 61,000 a year that the customers have been paying in. So some of those operational monies would have been pulled from that, collected already, so we should probably reduce that down from that to about 480,000 that the customers, and we would have to expense out over a number of years. And I think it takes it to about, if we pay it off out of operating funds this year, it should be about 9 years, not 13.
We'll quibble about
Yeah, I know,
the
I know.
formula.
Well,
Yeah.
first of all, we cannot expect 100% collection in all 61,000.
I agree.
I think maybe to clarify, what Director McVeigh is saying is that between September of 2021, which is when the new rate structure with the $1.88 started, until now, the $1.88's been collected and has not been put into reserve, but it's just been stayed in the operating. And I will dispute that, because this year, at least for this fiscal year, the money's been going into it. So it's quite possible that between September of 21 and June 30th of 22, that the $1.88 was not going into a separate savings account, and we need to check on that.
Yeah.
And it was going into operating. But that would probably only be the amount that we would reduce what is owed. And I guess what I'm suggesting is, yes, it should raise $60,000 a year. Let's just take 50 out of that to pay ourselves back, and then obviously there's more in the end, so it will reduce the number of years.
Right.
The second one here is the district board in early March purchased 500 acre-feet from the McConnell Foundation and wanted to use penalties to help pay for that cost. Because one of the ideas of having penalties is to help pay for it, and people overuse water in a drought, you collect penalties, that helps pay for future water purchases. So what I'm saying in this one is that at the end of this fiscal year, we're going to be putting those penalties reserves that you know we have collected about 124,000. We'll put that into the reserve, a reserve account, and then that'll come into this as an offset to the expense from the comp. And then there's the discretionary fund balance reserve. We're suggesting here use 0 of that, but that would be where you would use your rollover from the previous year or budget. Hope that makes sense, but that's just a better way to do your budgeting. I think is more clear. Again, on the expenses side, the only really complexity I think might be in the supply cost. The Bureau, we decided on 2,000 acre-feet of M&I/domestic water, 1,000 acre-feet of ag irrigation water. Obviously, we'd love to sell a lot more of that, and we're hoping that we do. But for cost budgeting purposes, we did that. And the other thing we did is we took 668 acre-feet of McConnell water out of that 2,000 because we have to purchase that separately. It's going to be attributed to M&I. So that's where we calculated at 1,332 acre-feet. The Bureau cost for domestic was $76,000, and then ag is $1,000 at $5,175 For 51,750, so the bureau costs about 128,000 in the budget. The McConnell cost is 125,000, again offset by that $100,000 revenue. I will just mention they did give us another 168 acre feet for no cost. The McConnell Foundation did, because it was sort of, I think, kind of a thank you for committing to the 500, and then all of a sudden, 3 weeks later we get full allocation. We didn't need it, even though in years past sometimes we lost the money. And then we have in your budgeted the WINAC payments. We make those payments at that budget. We will pay off the WINAC. So that's just really on the supply cost and treatment. I mean, the main thing I want to mention here, and we'll talk more about it in the next item, but just so the board knows and the community knows that back in March, when we were determining, we were still looking at a drought rate, right? And we were looking at worst case scenarios. So we had an estimation of $80,000 or $90,000 in utilities costs, and we were dividing it by the worst case scenario, which was about 1,300 acre feet of water. So that's where you got your about $80 an acre foot cost for utilities, and that's also where you got your $55 in O&M. So now, per acre foot in O&M. So here we have our utilities. We think it's going to be about $75,000. PG&E's already told us they're bumping rates about 17%. So again, divide that now by 3,000 acre feet. That reduces your cost per acre foot, which is why we're going to be reducing our price per unit. Same thing with chemicals. Chemicals gone up about 30%, but that's pretty much still the same in our chart at about 23, 24 bucks an acre foot. The O&M cost, last year we only put 1,800 acre feet of water through there, so this year we'll put over 3,000. So there will be a little bit more O&M costs. There's water analysis. In talking to, we have in the past, the district hasn't tracked some of the postage, paper, and printing supplies for the treatment plant, so we got that in there. And then, I had put in the previous discussion a number that was to support things, and I obviously didn't describe it very well. So what we have in here is a capital improvement expense item, and this is to track expenses supporting the grant-funded backwash ponds and electrical and skater repair that will potentially get reimbursed. But also the board may recall that for the second year in a row, the state provided that, and I put it in your packet maybe 2 months ago, I forgot to bring it with me, but it's like a 20-page assessment of our treatment plan. And at the end, they list a whole bunch of things, actuators, these valves, and a whole bunch of other stuff that they say, you guys getting a little old there, you might want to consider looking at it. And so we need a few dollars here to pay PACE initially to do an assessment, do some cost estimates, because if we're going to come up with a capital improvement plan in the future, those are the things that need to be in there. We need to know what they are. And again, in this division, the payroll items are all at the end. Distribution, transmission, again, wages and salary at the end. We've added a few things like safety equipment. The other thing that wasn't in the past, Chair Fick has even asked about it today, but the distribution always covers the north booster station. We have a separate section for south booster and wells. And in the past, we didn't even have an expense tracking for utilities for that. So that's in here, and we actually have a projection of what that is. On the O&M, again, a lot of things were all grouped into one. So now we have the backflow testing cost is here, and it's an offset to the revenue. USA stands for Utility Service Alignment. We get a lot of calls, MGE, PG&E, and all the rest that come out and mark these. I must say, for a long time, I always thought the marking of utility alignments was I was so proud of the fact that they were so patriotic, that USA, right? Wow, that's great. It actually stands for Utility Service Alignment. Kind of burst my own bubble on that one, but at least they're doing that. We've never really tracked that expense, and it does take Roberto and others quite a bit of time for that. tank expense is the same. A new item here is inventory. In the past, as I mentioned before, we go fix a leak, put in a new valve, section of pipe, we usually pull it. If we have it here, we get it elsewhere, and then we buy or replace that and put it into inventory for a future leak. Again, that was all lumped into repairs and maintenance, and that's been at least pulled out. The vehicle maintenance is the same pretty much as this last year. And under capital projects, there, as district may have forgotten, we have applied for a grant for a distribution assessment and then eventually rehab project. And again, I reported to the board maybe last month that the state finally got back to us and said, oh yeah, we're going to this desk and that desk and it's going to get looked at. But we need some support to get that project moving forward. We also have that Taffy Lane improvement, South Booster Wells, and grant other projects. So this is another opportunity to track that. The wells and booster thing, I need to inform the board that as much as I'd like to get this utilities below $60,000, right now I think we're going to have to keep it there because of the PG&E standby costs. So yes.
Is there any way of using our status as a disadvantaged district to get a better rate?
I don't know yet.
Okay.
But we will be working on it. There's a couple things. So first of all, just to explain this, and I have a family that are rice growers, and they pay, in some cases, $50,000 to $60,000 a year standby charges. So these are what they do is they calculate your well usage, your kilowatt hours of well usage, and so they say that is what we have to have available. Because we don't know when you're going to turn on your wells, and you can turn them on anytime. And we can have an emergency, we can have anything, we can flip the wells on. They have to have that power there available. And in the case of wells 1 and 2, it's like 156 kilowatts. And they're charging us $8 per kilowatt as standby fee. So for 2 wells, it's about $1,500 a month, and that's whether you turn the thing on or not. And for another well, it's about $2,400 a month. So this is this is the second full month in which we haven't used our wells. So it's kind of like, hey, wait a minute. So I'll be following up using every tool, disadvantaged community. What the heck are you doing here? I at least in this year, since we don't envision anything more than testing of the wells, I'd be willing to say yes, we'll do a standby, but reduce kilowatts, and significantly less standby. And if we turn them on, we'll pay more per kilowatt. Because once you turn them on, you actually do pay another rate. So that's where that's at. It calculates out. No changes. It'll calculate out to about 55,000, and then I got an extra 5,000 for testing. So the rest of that is pretty much their administration. I think just for purposes of the previous budget, we've now got a professional services section. We've also got the regulatory section in here, and we've also got customer accounts and administration, as well as all the employee benefits. So in the past, it was all scattered all over the place. The previous budget underestimated the utilities and supplies expenses, so we're recommending getting that more close to what we've been spending over the last up through 10 or 11 months. The organizational dues, the board has asked multiple times, who are we members of and what is this expense? And it was very high because I think in the past the district confused like the Aqua membership and JPIA and actually included some of our liability insurance into that. So right now there's 3 associations, the Association of California Water Agencies / Joint Powers Insurance Agency, that's JPIA. That membership is gives us access to all of the aqua resources, but also mostly the insurance resources. And based on my assessment of these and other places I've been, we are saving on our auto, liability, and workers' comp probably more than $16,000 of that membership cost. But that is, the 26,000 is made up of the 16,190, it's probably gonna go up. We are also a member of the American Water Works Association, AWWA, that's about $500 a year, and the Central Valley Project Water Association, which is about $800 a year. I've added a little bit to that for us to consider, not guaranteeing we're gonna join it, but the Special Districts Association, which is incorrectly identified in our memo here at $800, it's about $8,000. One of the reasons to consider that one is they actually have a finance arm in which we could put our savings accounts into and have quick access to them and not get tied up in CDs. They actually currently are about 4.5% for savings. So if it's worth that, then maybe we'll join. I just haven't done all the analysis for it. If we don't do it, then this is an extra $8,000 that we have. But we also could consider the California Rural Water Association. The mileage and travel, that's basically increased for those conferences as well as other travel. The insurance, it's about $50,000 for cyber, liability, and auto. We can get you the actual breakouts of that, but we won't know exactly what those are until July 1. The audit services is what we're contracted with them for. I want to just mention something in the budget that I don't think the district's ever really thought of in the past, but district director elections. So, for the last election in November, we paid our fair share of the election. In our district, it was $7,000, something like that. Yeah. So we won't have that expense this year, but it should be identified in the budget for next year.
Right.
If we had an election. IT is broken out. We have our municipal software, that's a reoccurring cost. As I've said before, we're looking at other potentials. And so there's a conversion and setup cost that's identified there. Previous to our update in our IT, we had all kinds of subscriptions to 3 licenses in this credit card and 5 licenses for this credit card, and it was attributed all over the place. So we calculated it out to be about $1,200 a month that we had in all these different subscriptions. We got it down to $600. It's probably going to go up a little bit more, but that's really where that one is. It also includes our QuickBooks subscription. For the computer maintenance, last year the district put $10,000 aside, thankfully, to upgrade our Windows 7 machine. We still have a couple more that we want to upgrade. And in the future, we may have some issues with our server, but all of the IT folks that have come in here said our server is good for a few more years. We are increasing a little bit the budget on legal because of these grants. One of the requirements that the state has is that when they do a funding agreement, they have to have a report from our district council that says all is well and everything. It's a few hours to do that. We've added an expense to track the engineering costs specifically for the district. We have a district engineer, space engineering, and yet we never really track when they do a little bit of work. We usually have it in different, and it still can be in the treatment and distribution, but there are times in which admin will be spending some money on that. Equipment leases, folding machine, printer, scanner, copier. Hopefully we will be able to, Kayla's working on this a lot to try to outsource our bills to be mailed so that we don't have that machine headache. Just as a reminder to the board, every other year, odd years in particular, the OPEB, that's the other post-employment benefit, retiree medical, the actuarial does a report that we submit to our trust fund, which is the Servit at CalPERS, and we also are to identify it in our budgets, etc. So that's up this year. I've also increased it slightly because you might recall when we signed the memorandum of understanding with our employees that we would look at changes to the retiree medical program, and that can start once they've done that 2023 actuary. We can start looking at scenarios for that. And then under the special professional, you've heard about the RDS and others that are helping us with HR and other functions. In the past, past, we didn't have regulatory in this section, so we do now, and we have it broken out for the different fees that are identified there, the community district fees for DWR, the water rights fee, the GSA. I did hear, by the way, that they didn't get the grant, the first round of their grant, so they're gonna try again here next month. So hopefully they get their grant, but if they don't, some of that money we needed, our LAFCO fee, which Chair Fickus and I both saw that they had generated, which is a little less than 5,000. Employee benefits, this is all pretty much straight across calculation, the JPIA workers' comp cost. In the past, the district did not identify its Medicare costs. We pay, 1.45%, and the withholdings from employees for the other portion of that. But we've got that in there. Same thing for our dental and vision plans, our district's disability insurance. As you recall, we don't participate in SDI, so we have our own. It also includes an accident and life insurance. Our CalPERS health insurance, pretty much tracking on those expenses. It could go up January 1, but you might recall the district has a change in the MOU. The baseline will be $1,400 and 70/30 from for the employees. Currently, it's $1,391 and it's 80/20. So again, that probably will offset any changes to that. This is our retirement contribution. It has gone up to 7.68%. That's the district's responsibility. Boot allowances per the MOU. The retiree benefits section, just to be more clear on what that is, this in the past it had this OPEB number in there that wasn't part of operating. It's a long-term liability, and that would show up in your balance sheet, not in your budget, and also in your audit. So in this section, we have a retiree health benefit that's a direct, in other words, it's how we pay our obligation. And then there's the retiree expense. So when we get a bill from CalPERS, it has all the actives, and then it has all the retirees. And so this is this budget item is where we're paying those retirees' expenses.
Can I interrupt you for just a second?
Yeah.
The boot allowance you have down there under the employee benefits, what about all the uniform costs that we have? Where is that going?
It's in safety.
Under safety? Thank you.
License and permits, and then interest expense, customer accounts. It's now also under admin, and this one is primarily all of the envelopes and bills and postage expense. And I'll cover a little bit in the payroll side of things. Payroll expenses broken out by division again. In the admin, it's just the general manager. It's, you can go on the website, my agreement has it in there. I get $136,000 a year. And, just based on that calculation and the potential for an increase in November, and then the health the benefits, $150,000. It's a little less than that, but that's pretty much what that is. Same thing with the treatment and distribution division, but I wanted to just mention that in our MOU, we have an annual cost of living increase, or COLA. It's based on the CPI-W from May, in this case of May of 22 to May of 2023. You might recall that one of the reasons why we went with this is the district had really an upside protection. In other words, if you didn't have a range in there, if the CPI came back at 5, then we would be giving everybody a COLA of 5 potentially. But in this case, the max, it doesn't matter what the CPI is, over 4%, the max is 4% to employees. And the employees have a downside protection on that too. So in other words, if inflation, CPI is less than 2, they will get at least 2. So that's the way that MOU works. So for all of these positions in this budget, it's based on that 4%. Even though we haven't got it finalized, it's tracking around 6.5 CPI-W, and even the land CPI that we received from the county for our appropriations limit is 4.4%. So again, in this section, all of that is with a 4% increase on July 1. We will post that as a new chart of job classifications and wages, and so compliant CalPERS on that. Under customer accounts, the board has been asking a lot about how for the last 6 months, 4 months that we've been getting kind of reconciled reports. It's been pretty clear we're getting right around 80, some months 78, some months 82% of our customers are paying. And so the district, after COVID, has only done one sort of lockouts and all the rest of that stuff because you weren't able to do that during COVID. We really are challenged with the capacity to do that. The previous budget was at 85% collections, and this budget is on 90. So the difference is about $80,000 to $90,000 of increased revenue. The current account clerk is a 0.8 times. So they put in, they work 4 days a week. And so if we were to put the account clerk and put them at full time, obviously you would have 4 more days a month at whatever their pay is, currently about $20 an hour, plus whatever benefits they selected. So that is going to cost as little as $8,000, but more like about $20,000 to have somebody do that. And we would use those added days of their time to track down customers that are late on payments. One of the things that our current system really struggles with is giving us a report. Who hasn't paid in the first 20 days? We are starting to finally get that. So we need to be able to follow them up. We need to send them a letter. We need to send them an email or make a call like, hey, your account, you always pay on time. Did the check get lost in the mail? Those kind of things. To find out, to make sure that people know that we're paying attention. Plus, we can then have that person follow our lockout procedures. In other words, here's your 30-day notice, here's your 60-day notice. In 15 days, you're going to get locked out, and then actually working with the guys to go lock it out. So I believe that kind of activity would definitely enhance our collections rate. We would be spending up to about $20,000 more for that person, and we would be getting the revenue of over $80,000 in. Now, we could, bring in another part-time person. I think that would be somewhat challenging. We've noticed, even when we had our super volunteer, Sally, it took her a long time to just figure out the system and to figure out kind of how, what the different books are and who's late, who's not. Now, she was very successful in getting people to start to pay, as well as helping with getting people on payment plans and stuff like that. But it took a long time. There'd be a little disruption there. I also think our current account clerk is interested in being full-time. I think it would be, and she's been great, and I suspect that if we hired somebody part-time to do this and that, I don't know how long, in other words, it could be a retention issue if keeping somebody there, but that's another reason to really go with this budgeted recommendation and to hire and move that person to full-time.
So on your synopsis of this, it says adding 4 days a month account clerk time, and it says that they'll use 3 days to work on the overdue accounts. So they're gonna put the other day to helping out Melissa and you.
Yeah, I don't think we define first of all, it's a typo. The 4 days are gonna be added on to work on the account stuff. 3 of it would probably be tracking down customers and late types of things. Maybe only 2 of it. The other 2 would be working with, like I said, Melissa and Kayla on other elements of sending out letters. It's just how those 4 days break out, but would be focused on this. The other thing too that's helpful, as you know, right now, on Fridays, that individual's not in the office. When we have busy Fridays, our bookkeeper and admin assistant is spending a lot of time with customers, not necessarily getting minutes from previous board meetings done, updating policy. There's a whole bunch of other things that kind of get distracted on that. But it was a good catch. I just noticed that now. It was a typo. So 4 days would be to track on customers' late payments, but how those 4 days and what specifically they get allocated.
So one of the things I think we're all probably concerned with that we just have to make sure is that it's very easy for you guys to get busy and her not to do that job. And so there's got to be some assurances that, you know, that time is set aside for her to do just that.
Excellent point to the chair, and this is where we have an opportunity to update the account clerk job description if it's going to be full-time, and make sure that the delinquent accounts and all the other elements are in there, so that, in other words, it can be used when I do my reviews of that individual and all that, to make sure that it doesn't just get pushed aside. So very, very good point.
Because that's going to be the key to increasing the money that we need to fund other areas.
Absolutely.
Oh, yeah, that's $150,000 a year we're losing.
I'm going to just finish with, I already really talked about the designated to reserve. So this is a new category, not previously identified. It's made up of 2 sections. The first section is a way to expense to reserve amounts, the same as the revenue and the designated revenue. I really think this is a powerful statement by the board to the community that you know, we're charging you this, we're committed to actually putting them in the correct reserves, so we're actually going to make sure that they show up on our reports and in our budget. And then the second section is this whole section on tracking and to build reserves, because I think one of the things the community's committed to, and the board's committed to, and I'm committed to, is building the reserve. But the other thing is, when you look at the rate rationale that the district put together in July and August of 2021, approved August 30th of 2021, which is our Prop 218 rates, it has your base rate schedule out for 5 years. It has how the usage rates are going to be calculated. And in that document, admittedly, there's some confusions in there. There's mentioning of putting money into reserves for the future and to rebuild the reserves. And it's very, in my opinion, it's very specific that there is a 4.1% usage rate of usage is as a reserve. So we've seen it in our calculation, our rate sheet. You're going to see it in your next agenda on the board item to reduce our rates, but in those reduced rates, it's still the 4.1%. So we need to show the community and everybody we're collecting it and we're putting it into a reserve. And in this case, I'm suggesting operating reserve. We can, whatever you tell me we want to put it in, but I'm just saying that should go into an operating reserve. The base rate also had a 1.8% of the base rate was supposed to go into reserves. Has not been done since September of 2021. So we're going to do it, and we're going to try to figure out how to calculate back what it was supposed to be, and so we can start catching up on that. I'm suggesting we put that in the expansion and modernization reserve. Just found out recently that reserve was supposed to be for just capacity charge payments. It has $104,000 in it right now. I know we have not received, there's nobody we haven't had any growth out here for the last 4 or 5 years, so we haven't had $104,000 worth of capacity charges paid to it. So it turns out in 2021, the district converted a CD, I'm not sure what it was designated for, and put it into this reserve. So that's why there's some actual money in that reserve, but ultimately we need to start putting money in from the base rate into a reserve. Nothing better than an expansion and modernization or a capital reserve. Sounds like a good name for it. In my mind, I believe we have an emergency fund fund, reserve. It's got a nice $446 in it. Time to start putting some money in there. And so in this case, I'm suggesting we start putting some money into it. And I think when we were looking at our old reserve policies from 2008, we found that we had a USVR emergency reserve. So I confirmed with the Bureau that that is still a valid thing. In other words, even with our conversion contract, to be compliant with Article 17, we need to have a USVR emergency reserve. The emergency reserve is for the conduit. So there's emergency and conduit. We're supposed to both be able to pull from our respective emergency reserves to do that. Just remember, the district owns all its facilities except for the conduit. The conduit's owned by the Bureau, but we're responsible for the maintenance of it. So when I put this together, I said, I can't find that we have an account for that, so we better start putting some money into that reserve to be compliant. Melissa has since found out we have a CD. Doesn't show up on any of our other charts, but we got a CD, $36,000, and it's an emergency reserve. It's our Bureau emergency reserve. So good news, we got more money than we thought we had. So I'm going to suggest that we just take that $3,500 and put it into our emergency fund. So make it $13,500. And then here's your discretionary fund balance reserve. So in other words, when you budget, you try to have more revenue than expense. And so after all this hot air that I have spoken here, I'm getting very tired of listening to myself, but I think I've tried to explain it as well as I could. We actually have $7,500 more revenue than expenses. So what you do is you put that into your discretionary fund balance so that you zero out the rest. So you have a balanced budget. And so that would be how much, we could put more if you want. In other words, we could put the $3,500 into that instead of into the emergency fund. But that would be for a mid-year budget review or rollover in the next year, if need be. Madam Chair, my apologies for taking so much time, but I think it's very important. It's one of the most important things we do, doing budget.
Okay, so what we're gonna do is probably nitpick it apart a little bit. But what was frustrating for me is that in May we had one budget, and then we had another little budget, and then we've got a new little budget. And so I think as you guys are doing the review, you're gonna see the same thing. It's sometimes hard to track because it changed, you know. And granted, it's supposed to change, but it was just a little bit hard to track. So were there, we'll just start at the end. Terry, was there any specific items that you wanted to go over as far as what the amount of money that we'll put into line items?
I just, the capital improvements, they weren't real, you've got like a slush fund at the end, you know, other things you mentioned. I went through the budget first and then went back to the justification. But the capital improvements right at the end of it, you say, and other projects, you know.
So like, are you talking, like if you went to page 2 of the budget in your packet, are you talking about like 30600?
Yeah.
And then
And then
also, and then 4 down at the very bottom, 40,
Right.
480?
And then you go back to the justification, or to his memo, and it says, and other projects. And that's like a slush fund. I'd rather have, and other projects taken out. If you've got other projects, and bring them in, we'll change the budget, or, you know. Yeah, does that make sense to you?
That's fine.
So, okay.
Yeah, I'm positive that what's listed under capital projects is all we're gonna really get to.
That's what I figured too, but then
So-
you add that last little
Yeah.
sentence in there.
No,
Two words
I think
in there.
I think it's a super, super good catch, and I'm scratching that out right now.
And it was quite confusing in your Well, I guess you're gonna use this as a justification, right? You're gonna provide a justification for this budget? Because that's what, you know,
Yeah, the memo is all, I call it an explanation of the budget.
Right.
Yeah, the rationale and
Right.
justification.
the, under repair and O&M, in your rationale, you tell where the, salaries are. And I would rather see that salaries taken right out of that rationale, because salaries are at the end of the budget. And it made it look like you were trying to put salaries in one place and collect them in another place also, even though you state it, but it, just made it kind of confusing.
Under distribution and transmission
Right.
and the others.
Yeah, it says repair and maintenance.
You're right. These all the wages and salaries are in, and I will just say that, in the budget packet and background, they did get removed, but it is confusing. It almost looks like it's a double.
Yeah, that's the way I looked at it.
I think at the time when I was putting together this memo, I mean, it's not a short memo.
No, and it made sense after I read it, but it's just not, if somebody else is gonna be reading it, you know, and it's gonna look like you're putting it in two places.
And I think too, the other, thing was as you may recall, the previous years, multiple years of budgets would have, their first line would have wages and salaries. And, you know, I didn't want people to think that I wasn't, budgeting for wages and salaries in the different divisions. But there should have been, if I did that, it should have been a caveat, like, this is just an explanation, this is not included here, it's later. Very good catch.
The other one was, 500 special and professional services, and other $15,000. That one didn't quite. Also,
Say the numbers again,
It's
55?
50500,
page 3.
yeah. And it's at the
It was
bottom.
hard to go from here, from the budget, and find it in justification.
Can I ask a question of you and the board? Would it be better when I do it in the overall packet, to actually have the account numbers in the memo?
Yes.
Yeah. Same for us, the public, it would make it easier to kind of cross-reference.
Yeah.
Okay, awesome. Didn't occur to me until yesterday when I was doing the same thing.
Yeah.
Probably would have been.
A lot of that.
That was really the only things, I liked the way you did the payroll and expenses, that was very clear for me, so I thought that was great. That was the only things I had.
Scott, were there any
That's good.
additional things for you?
Having gone over this and submitted concerns or questions previously, this is a very workable budget. Am I in agreement with it 100%? Of course not. It's a work in progress, and we will review it either quarterly or semi-annually and make the adjustments necessary, but so far, it looks pretty good. The only thing I would ask, because we're basically zeroing out revenues versus expenses, is there some way of putting the McConnell actual that we pay out this fiscal year and removing that from the budget? So whatever we pay on that 500 acre feet that we expense out this fiscal year, I think should come off. Or if you want to leave that in as some sort of a cushion, because we don't have unanticipated expenses. In other words, this fiscal year, which ends June 30th, we will pay McConnell for a certain number of acre feet of water, actually reducing that 125. So into next year's budget, it will be actually a reduced amount. I know we've had this conversation about trying to use the McConnell water early on. so we don't pay for something we don't end up using.
Correct. So I think for maybe the full board's understanding is currently we're budgeting for the next fiscal year, paying for all 500 acre feet, which at this time was what we know. Now, for schedule, the plan is we're going to purchase some of that contracted water from McConnell in this current fiscal year that ends June 30th. And I'm going to recommend to the board that we make that adjustment at our quarterly adjustment time, because that's when we'll actually know how much we're able to pay for in this fiscal year. So that's,
I understand.
we can
That's
project, it's easy to project,
Right.
but I think for safety's sake,
I'm only looking at the scheduled portions already. I'm assuming there was some scheduled last month and some scheduled for this month.
right. Well, again, if we were gonna use McConnell water in May, of the water that we were taking out of Whiskey Town, technically we were supposed to tell both the Bureau and McConnell in April.
Yeah, I know.
So, now, just found out today that, based on our better relationship than we had in the past, the Bureau is willing to allocate some of the water that we used in May as McConnell water. So I've talked to Jeff at representing McConnell, and he's willing to do it, and they're working on the paperwork, so hopefully we'll be good. But again, in putting together the budget, specifically to that question, I'd be hesitant to make a change to the
I
purchase
understand.
water cost.
And I'm fine with the quarterly adjustment.
And I just mentioned again, to the director's comment, it's my plan that you will see a monthly activity report that will be reflective of this chart. And then every quarter, so July, August, September, at the October meeting, we will be looking at the first 3 quarters and comparing it to this budget. And if we need to make some adjustments at that time, we'll know. My guess is we won't be making too many adjustments in the first quarter, but
Probably
definitely
not, but.
Anything else?
No.
Okay.
So, under the water treatment plant, you have safety equipment and training, and I assume that for Bill is boots and different things that he needs up there. So, and that goes just to the water treatment plant.
Yeah, so there are some specific add-on items up there. They do have some areas that are in confined space. In other words, they are supposed to have specific training for confined space work. We also have a significant chlorine tank and facility. So they've got masks and a bunch of other stuff. All that's supposed to be renewed and tested. So that's why there's a specific budget.
So then we get to the employees' benefits, and it says boot allowance, which I understand that they get, but shouldn't the safety equipment be in there, since that's where we designate our uniforms from? And I do have questions about uniforms. I'd like to know, what we're paying for.
Anybody want to answer that?
Meaning what?
Meaning,
Besides pants?
if we're doing pants, and how many pants, or are we doing shirts, or?
Are you talking
So real quick.
vacuum cleaning?
Yeah, the cleaning side of things. So we do offer all of our field staff, this was obviously a big issue for a lot, and we are going to put it out to bid and proposals to see if we can get a better price. But the cleaning of the apparel is also a supply of pants. In other words, we're renting, in this case, we're renting from Aramark a certain number of pants per operator. They also get washed. In other words,
See, we never knew that when we talked about this.
No.
We talked about it just washing the pants when we were
Right.
discussing the MOU. We had no idea we were supplying pants. That would have been another little,
And
There
then
was a difference between washing them because they were in the mud versus actually buying them and washing them.
well, not
It's-
leasing.
It's a rent,
Renting
leasing.
them.
But
Yeah.
not only that is, from what I understand, they get 13 pair of pants every 2 weeks, just in case they get dirty.
Yeah.
That's ridiculous.
Chris, you have a comment?
Having worked for a uniform company, I can tell you why. So if they get 13 pairs of pants, that's based on a 6-day a week work week, and they always give them an extra. So if they have a 5-day work week, then they usually are allotted 11 pants. If they sometimes work 6 days a week, then they're allotted 13 pants. So that's pretty standard.
On call,
Yeah.
whatever.
I know it's a little petty thing probably in your mind, but all these little tiny petty things cost money, and we don't have the extra money, and I want to get rid of what we can. So if they're on a 5-day work week, they need 10 pair of pants, period. But second of all, we didn't know we were supplying the pants, we thought we were just washing them for them.
Does the MOU say washing, or does it say supply of pants?
It says actually,
It's laundry services.
it says uniform.
Yeah.
It says something about
It's-
supplying them a uniform.
It's very ambiguous, you could go both ways. So I'm just, so they get 13 pair of pants, correct? Are they scheduled for a 5-day work week?
Well, they're on a rotating
But they're on a
basis.
rotating on-call, so they can have 7-day work weeks, with being, if they're on call. So I think, I don't know, I mean, we'd have to ask Aramark, but I think as the supervisor said, you tell them in a month's period of time what they're gonna be work, they break it out over 2 weeks, that's where they calculate the 13 pants. And it's for them too, I mean, Aramark is not washing him in Reading, they're trucking them down to the Bay Area and washing them, so they obviously need a certain.
And I believe it's 38 cents a pair of pants is the cost.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's the washing of them, but that's
but-
probably all rolled into one.
So that's a problem for me, but also it's not under employee benefits where it should be as far as a safety matter. As far as, if we're trying to get this so that we really know what the employees' benefits are.
Well, I
And
think what we could do to Director Beaver's input here is, we obviously have under employee benefits the boot allowance, which, just for recall, in the MOU, it's a maximum of $100 reimbursable for a pair of boots per operator per year. That's why I think it's a 700.
Oh, I totally agree with that.
And so I think what we probably could do, and I'll just look to our bookkeeper here, is to figure out how to break out where it currently is for that apparel thing and get it in here and call it what it is. That way we can track it specifically for just that item. So one of the things that we also are doing is we're putting together sort of what our needs are. Now that we're fully staffed, by the way, it's a red letter week for the Third Creek Community Services District. We had a new T3 start on Monday, so the first time we have full staff. So, yay. 10 employees plus a general manager, 70% of them just in the last 8 months, so. But I think what the director is saying, which is a really good one, let's figure out how to cut that out and put it into that separate line item. And then we'll budget for it, we can calculate it out. But what we're doing is, then we're gonna go to Mission and Cintas and whoever else is out there, and hopefully we can find somebody local we can hand them, this is what we have, this is what we need, give us your estimate on the cost.
Well, I would also like to know, understand from our MOU, and I read it over twice, that it's ambiguous as far as if we provide the pants or if we provide the service.
Well, the same paragraph, it says two different things.
Yeah,
That was interesting, because we had that discussion. One of them says, and it's 6.12 on the
That's-
MOU.
yeah.
But one of the lines says we provide a uniform cleaning service, and then the other line says employees are responsible for maintenance of their own uniforms.
So I wasn't real cool about washing their pants for them, but, I mean, but now, not only are we washing their pants, we're providing them all, and we had no clue on that. And I'm being picky because we're poor. I mean, so, okay, I have one other question. Building and maintenance, last year, I'm guessing that's for the landscaping, and it's 5535. I'm guessing that's for the landscaping and taking care of stuff around the.
So you're talking about 50535.
Yes,
Right. I will, look to our bookkeeper on that, but I think we have, most of those expenses would be our exterminator that comes and
Okay.
sprays. We also, pay our bail alarm company out of that.
Waste management, I thought too.
Right.
Isn't it?
What's that?
Waste
Waste
management,
Waste management, exterminator, what else we got there? We had to get our septic tank pumped, so that one was expensive, from Brown Plumbing recently.
okay. That's what I did, just, the side
So-
of it's on landscaping, we're getting
No.
taken to the cleaners.
No, I will say that, at some point, we do need to, look at what around here, needs to get taken care of. The guys actually had a little bit of time in the last, 2 days to get out and, weed eat in front of the place.
I saw it
Pick
today.
up, yeah, and pick up around,
now the customers want to ask what we're gonna water.
The weeds?
yeah, I don't know if we want to water our weeds, but, actually, I will just say, in the state assembly members' infinite wisdom, that's an oxymoron. They just passed a bill that says that you can't water, what they call it useless space.
Oh.
They would call that useless space because we don't have a park bench on it, or we don't have soccer goals in it, or something like that, so,
Yeah, we ought to
crazy.
get rid
Don't-
of this.
I'll go get spray paint, we'll make it pretty.
Yeah, there we go.
So the other thing too is,
Agreed.
the driveway is getting lots of cracks. I actually took my own personal sprayer and sprayed all the weeds out of it, because the quickest way to destroy asphalt is weeds growing in it. We've got a little pothole out front there that we're gonna probably try to cold patch. But I am trying to see if, I don't know if we're gonna have any money to do it, but I wanted to see what it would cost to slurry seal it, just to seal it, just to kind of give it another 5 years of life. So that would potentially, I don't know if we have room in there, but if we had that, we'd come to you and let you know what it
First, we
costs.
need to cut the dead trees.
Are there some other dead trees out there too?
Oh, yeah,
Well, we did have one removed, as you saw, that was diseased.
we have two in front, one over there.
Yeah. All right.
Okay, anything else?
No.
So you got
Okay,
that note.
so most of mine, I think, over the course of the last month, I've gotten answered. I'm just trying to look at all three of the, comments that I had made as we've changed things. Just for, there was one thing I wanted to tell. So the payroll was all step 4, right? That was basically.
Based on stuff more.
Okay, and then, I don't know if you guys noticed from the last draft, we went from water sales of, 650,000 down to 408,000, and that's gonna be based upon what we do next year. So
Yeah.
by just reducing it by 20 cents, we're losing, what do we have, like right?
No, we're not
Two-
overcharging.
Two-
280, but
Okay,
I think we are more accurately charging the customers what the actual cost is.
that's right, and which we have to,
And,
so,
right, so I
Okay.
think we need to be straight up with that. And
Okay.
we told everybody when we adopted what we thought was a blended rate, but it had obviously some high rates, that we would change it when we found out that it was needed to be changed.
so some of the things that I thought were high were our insurance for our vehicles and building, but, when you compare it to a private sector, but again, we've got a big fleet, and you have to have $1 million policy versus, 100,000, 500,000, so that wasn't anything we could really do too much about. So, okay,
Did we ever find out if the, dump truck got paid for?
no, it's not, oh,
Oh, that check that Sandy Winters had mentioned, haven't seen if there was any.
I looked on the books, I didn't see anything on the books for $78,000 anywhere that I could find, so, and I didn't see any mention anywhere.
No mention of a voided check anywhere in there.
But there also wasn't a $36,000 CD on the books either,
So,
not on you guys. That's you guys.
so any comments from the, floor, community? Yes,
Small one. So like Pam was saying on like the grounds and, building maintenance one, is there a way that like in the back, there's like an appendix kind of thing where it like breaks down those that have multiple things grouped into it, so that way somebody like from the public being like, why are we spending, like Pam said, why are we spending so much on grounds and maintenance? We have barely a front yard, what's it all going into, if it can get like just a little background breakdown for those ones that have those multiple lumpies for us layman people?
I think there's probably lots that have lumpies in them though.
yeah, there's a lot of different.
But I agree with you,
But just like-
cause we asked that question too, yeah.
And it doesn't have to do like a full breakdown of like every penny goes to here, just even like a summarized, being like, this is for our waste management, plumbing, like, having the septic done,
Through the chair, if you don't mind, I think it's really good, which is why I'll break out this and show it to you why this is what's gonna go to the board on June 21st instead of just the numbers. So the plan is to have a little intro, you can have a little history and background of the district, a little description of the facilities, you're gonna have a little thing of our finances. In other words, this is our revenue, this is our expenses, what we usually have, a little breakdown of our staffing and chart, and then it'll go through, similar to what I just did, the revenue for this current year and all the rest. And then on the expenses side, I need to add in what you just mentioned, but the plan is to have, like, each one of them, the engineering will just at least explain what that is. The legal, this is slightly increased because we have grant agreement reviews, and so we'll have to add in things like buildings and maintenance has got things like,
Waste management,
waste
plumbing,
management, the
security system.
security and taking care of septic.
Pest control.
So it's a really good point. We're already tracking on that, trying to figure out how to do that. And then, then it'll have a little pie chart that has revenue and expenses broken out, a little discussion about our grants, and then it'll have the actual budget side.
So I think some of these items also have a little bit of wiggle room where we've maybe estimated a little bit over. So I'm hoping by the end of the year that we'll be better than what we think we are. It's just good to see money going into reserves for a change, and to finally see money being put in the right accounts that we knew that they weren't in there before. So that's good. So the next step for us is this was just a discussion only. Anyone else?
So I have a question for Paul. Is there or have you ever started a kind of a capital, what we want to do, and a wish list with priorities? I mean, because one of the things that we've talked about in our budget discussions have been, we need to get more computers. We need to get better software so the ladies are not going through what they're going through. And then Kayla and I were talking about someday down the road, because it's not a big priority, getting a website that you can function on. It would be nice to have, I mean, as you go through your months of what is the biggest priority. I know that the parking lot is not in real good shape, but it can do. I would rather see you guys have computers or a better programming, because that one affects our bottom line, and two affects our employees.
Yeah, I think all of us sort of have a little bit of that list, and we're working on that. I will just tell you, my primary priority is in the last 6 months, we've got ourselves fully staffed. It's huge.
In an MOU.
We got an MOU done. I would assert you have probably one of the best budget processes the district's had in a long time. And it really gives us the tools to do exactly what you're saying.
I know that, I know, and
So
we did not have the tools before that.
Yeah, and so this, in the past, I would say wish lists were dreams. Until you can actually figure out whether or not you know where the money's going, you can't really do that. And again, I think to the chair and to Director McVeigh's comments, I'm a big fan of underestimating revenue and overestimating expenses. So it is a tight budget based on that,
That's what we.
but I think we're gonna find out it'll do us well.
Yeah,
That's
that's what I'm looking for. Yes, Scott.
Just to our general manager, page 2, line item 29,100, the WIN-Act repayment. You've got here budgeted $250,000. I know we just approved a payment of $100,000 to them in this current fiscal year. Isn't that going to be dropped to $200,000 with those 2 payments we just made? Or do we? I thought we had only a $300,000 balance after the last 50 we had made.
Yes, I thought so as well, but again, based on my view of it, this is correct. And again, I'm gonna say the same thing I said about the McConnell one. This is where I'm a big believer in you overestimate your expense because of, until you know exactly what it is, and we'll make a mid-year adjustment on that.
Well,
50K is a pretty big over adjustment though.
I mean, we haven't heard back from the letter either, correct? That letter that they
The
demanded.
reconciliation.
Yeah,
That could be 40,000.
yeah.
Right.
So,
Okay. Let's see how it
Valid
all.
point, valid point.
okay, all right. So this was only a discussion, and then it will come back to our June 21st meeting for a public hearing.
6:30 time certain, public hearing.
Okay, so we are meeting at 6, but the public hearing portion will be at 6:30.
You know, just for the community and the board's purposes, it's just a little trick I like to do. You know, a lot of districts will set your public hearing at your standard meeting date and time. Fine, well, we know we're meeting at 6 o'clock, so what's so special about it? So I think by setting it at 6:30, we can tell anybody that would audit us, we really did have a public hearing on that.
Okay,
All right, Madam Chair, just 6B, ordinance 2308, normal year water rate ordinance. And as mentioned before, in March, when we were doing our what we thought remember we were still in stage 2. We thought we might be staying in that stage 2 drought. We had to take the worst case scenario of the amount of water available, and at that time that was 1,132 acre feet of water. So if you say that if you think your utilities are gonna be 70, 80, or 90, we knew we were gonna be probably close to $90,000, or at least that was the thought, because it was gonna be about 80 plus 13%. So you divide that by your 1132, guess what? You come up with $80 an acre foot for utilities. And the same thing for O&M. You had 65,000 in O&M divided by 1132, that gives you $55 per acre foot. That's That's where you get your 56 cents out of treatment per unit. So this is a whole long one-page conversation that boils down to, now we got 3,000 acre feet that are gonna go through the plant, at least that's what we're hoping for, but we're hoping for even more. So then you take your now 75 or 80,000 in utilities, divided by 3,000, that gets you a significantly less cost, that's $25 per acre feet. And then on the O&M, the same thing, that gets you $26 per acre foot. That drops your total treatment cost. That's because the chemicals pretty much stay the same per acre foot, same with labor and standby and overtime. So now you're down to 37 cents. So the Bureau's M&I water costs $57.18 per acre foot. That is 13 cents per unit. You add that to your 37 cents per unit of treatment cost. You multiply it by 4.1% for reserves, now identified, not previously. And guess what? You come up with 52 cents per unit for domestic. And then for irrigation or ag water, $51.75 per acre foot. That's 12 cents per unit. 37 plus 37 cents per unit for your cost of treatment, plus 2 cents per unit for the reserve accounts. That's 51 cents per unit. Voila, you have before you 2023-08 with an updated cost per unit ordinance. And I would strongly encourage the board to approve this ordinance. There was some rumors that reducing the price would mean, or cost, would mean it would go into effect immediately. I really believe that to be true. I have been told by our council it is not true, that it still has to wait 30 days before it's effective.
We tried.
No, I have an argument to that.
Go right.
Here's my argument to that. Are we in compliance with charging the customer the correct rate right now at 51 cents? So we currently are overcharging our customers 20 cents per HCF. So we're in violation of Prop 218 because your costs have got to be what the water is, or you abide by what legal has given us that it's 30 days. Which one's the lesser of the evils? If we're in violation of, are we in violation of this one or in violation of this one? So that's my thought process, is why can't we pass that right now, exactly right now onto the customer?
We've done it in the past.
Well, we have, but I'm not one for that because they've done things wrong in the past. And so what's the lesser of the evil? What's going to benefit the customer? Making them wait 30 days? That also hurts us because we want them to use more water. So, thoughts?
I agree with you.
I
I
agree
thought
with
last
you.
time we'd be able to just rescind it back, and she has the valid legal point of we're in a sense in violation of our Prop 218 water rate.
Yeah, well, first of all, I'm not a lawyer, I'm just a general manager. I will do as you tell me to do. I think, I do not believe we are in violation of our Prop 218 because we passed the ordinance and set the rates based on what we knew at the time. If the board would like to approve this ordinance and to direct the general manager to implement it, then the general manager will do as he is told.
I need people to talk about it. Yes, Dennis?
It seems as though that the water lines, we need replacing the valves. There's a lot of valves have got to be replaced. Meters have got to be replaced. So I think if there's some additional revenue, I think it ought to be stuck back into the infrastructure.
You mean if we make it for 30 days out for the next month? Did you calculate how much it was?
For me alone, I was $27.70 I overpaid.
Well, how much acre feet do we use, a month? About 100 right now? What are we at?
Well, last month, was 150, domestic and 25 of ag, so 190, or 175, I'm sorry, 176.
183.
So, okay, let's just figure it out. I gotta times it by what? I gotta take 193, I use rotten thing, 193 times 435, 435.60, something like that. And then that figure I then have to divide, or then I have to,
Multiply by 0.72 if you want your current.
oh, okay, that's 60,000. Well, I would only have to times it by 20 cents to see what we would say.
Oh, right.
So let's do it again.
$15,521.
$15,000?
Yeah.
Talk to me, Terry.
I would think if we were raising it, it would be a big issue. Seeing we're bringing it down, I don't see it as a big issue. So,
Again, I will just say, I'm sorry to interrupt you, Director Lincoln, we are operating under the previously approved ordinance that has a rate in it. That is legit and legal. You are asked today to approve this ordinance, resetting the rates. Your direction to me is what I will implement.
He's right. We are right now currently charging what is appropriate and legal.
Well,
I mean,
well,
Based on,
From a practical standpoint, you're reducing the rate, we're implementing, right?
to Dennis's point, would $15,000 help a lot in buying valves and stuff? And
one actuator maybe.
Potentially, but I would just say, when you implement the reserves that are required in here, that
we'll be fine.
you're gonna be better off doing that over the full budget year.
Yes.
And trying to capture some excess revenue in 1 month.
I think we should go down.
So I looked at Prop 218, and what it says is, Section 3 was that the initiative power shall not be prohibited or otherwise limited in matters of reducing or repealing any local tax, assessment, fee, or charge. But in other spots where we had found was that the water rate was, you couldn't charge more than what the water costs us. And in essence, we've actually been out of balance since April. Would that be correct, when we went down to 72 cents? Was it April or May? And so we were.
Well, it was April when we went to it, it was May when we found out we were at full allocation, if you remember.
Correct, but I mean, we went down in April into 72, and so, yeah, so it was May when we realized that the full allocation, and that's when we're actually.
That's when the per unit cost for utilities and O&M goes down. So, I do think, now, if the board is concerned that somebody is going to file a challenge to you for reducing your rates prior to the 30 days, then we will comply with that. So let me just say it again. I believe that you should approve ordinance 2023-08 and direct your general manager to implement the new rate sheet.
Oh.
I don't want this.
Yeah, yes.
When do you start charging for your water? Do you do a month from the first of the month to the end of the month?
Basically, but one of our challenges as supervisor is that we read the meters like the 18th of the month through the 24th of the month. And about the 25th, we upload those to the account. That's when they get charged for it.
Okay, so you're in the process now. The next week, you're going to be charging for this month. you're gonna be reading the meters, and then you're sending out that.
That'll be their July 1, bill.
July 1 bill based on the June sales.
Yeah.
Well, why don't you just make this effective July 1st then? The change of rate is effective July 1st. Then when you're reading the meters next month, then it'll be based on your new thing.
Yeah.
So you're almost at your 30 days, you're at 4 days,
Right.
and you'll just be starting to charge the new rate, so July 1st.
Well,
Yes.
does
but
that
I
give
think-
you enough time for the program to change the rates though?
Oh, yeah.
Well, yes, but your July bill will be based on June usage at 71 and 72 cents.
In June prices, right?
Yes.
Unless we tell you to make it effective immediately.
Correct.
If we tell you effective immediately,
Then what we will do is we will then have to make sure it gets into the system so that when I just described, when the meters are read and all that data is uploaded and attributed to each one of the accounts, what that does is says, oh, this account, 3 units times the unit cost equals that.
so we have to almost do it immediately, because if we
Well-
wait till July 1st, then we're screwed.
Careful of immediately, because you've already sold them a week's worth of water in June. They've already used a week's worth of water in June. So if you make it immediately, now he's gonna have to figure out, hey, the water they use between the 1st and the 6th or the 7th is at 72 cents, and the water they use from the 8th to
Oh,
the.
yeah.
So I would make it effective
Yeah.
July 1st.
Well,
Have fun, Melissa.
Like, isn't technically the July, like, it wouldn't be technically July 1st, because if we read the meters between the 18th and 24th, technically the 25th in theory is like our new bill cycle for our stuff. So then wouldn't it be the day of the new bill cycle, like being June 25th?
Right, but you wouldn't get that bill until,
You get it July
Or
1st.
whatever, you know.
so
It's
if
all
we,
based on usage, and you implement it in July, then all water uses, we don't quibble with a couple of days of
Right.
water usage, right, between the 28th and July.
But by 20 cents.
But then July through July 24, you get your meter read, we upload that up there, and we charge you by the new rate.
correct.
so my July bill, what we're saying is meter gets read like on the 15th or 18th or whenever that's getting read. I get my statement on July 1st, it's gonna be at the 50-cent mark, and not,
No, it'll be at the 72.
I want it at the 50-cent mark.
Well, then direct me to implement immediately if you want it.
Let's just direct them.
And that's what I mean, how difficult is that to do that? Do we have to do it before they go out and read the meters? I would assume that we do. So it gets uploaded with the.
It's only the 7th of June.
I know, so we're okay with that.
There's a whole week.
I'm just making sure we're okay, that we're not burdening with that aspect. I can see no reason to wait. I don't.
Let me go water my trees.
I mean, it's just a boon for the customers. You know, we've got a boon water here, we want them to use more water, you know.
And then in the July bill, we put in a flyer with balloons on it saying great because of good, because one of our problems is we haven't communicated well with our customers. So let's let them know what a good job that the district is doing and that we are working for them and maybe turn around some of the bad PR we have.
Well, we've communicated as best we possibly can with the tools that we have.
I
The
know.
fact of the matter is, very few people will read their newsletter. But I'll tell you what, they'll see on their bill, if they see 52 cents, they may go back and look at their bill and see their newsletter and say, why is that?
Yeah. Yep.
Look, as I said before, I'm just your little old general manager here, you tell me what to do. You're my boss.
Continuing the discussion. Approximately what % of customers actually walk into the office and pay? Just give me a ballpark. 10%? Do we have maybe 200?
Yeah,
What if we can't put something up there to let people know that's kind of in their face? Hey, have you read this? Did you know about this? And I'd like to ask one, Paul, you
We need to
mentioned
give them, we
possibly,
need to hand one to them too.
well, possibly, when you mentioned possibly a postcard out to each of the companies. Hey, great news, we have all the water you can afford to buy, and it's only 52 cents per unit. You know, some way, because our budget assumes we're selling 3,000 acre feet, where last year we only sold 1,800 acre feet, and it was a very tough year. People learned to live with a lot less, so now we're trying to get them to
Gotta
go ahead and
encourage
use,
them.
and a lot of people don't know about it and are gonna be hesitant. So, you know, why should I redo my lawn if next year it's a drought again and it dies again? So we need to.
Can you tell me what you think?
I think if we just keep quiet, don't bother nobody, send the bills like you always do, and then fall into the new price, be done with it. Otherwise, you're gonna piss somebody off, somebody's gonna catch it, is what's gonna happen, just like you caught
Yeah, there's a slippery slope in there if we do it immediately.
it. Is it actually breaking the law, what we're doing, what we're talking about doing? Is it the 218, is that,
I don't know. I think where both our lawyer came down on is they read our rate rationale, which was a Prop 218 approved item, and it said that annually the costs would be calculated and that it would be passed on ordinance and effective 30 days from being passed.
the only way you can really do it is when it comes to the 19th of the month, switch it over.
Yeah.
I mean, when you start a fresh month, switch it over.
So I think that's what it comes down to, just for the board purposes.
So
But I think the presumption though was that that was gonna be an increase in cost versus
Exactly.
the previous year. But you can go through and read that all again, and it doesn't acknowledge there's a potential that it could go down. And I
yeah,
think-
it's all based
I
on,
think the chair is right when you look at the Prop 218 item that you looked at, because I've seen that before, that when you reduce, that's what I was operating under when you and I talked about it once before. I'm just telling you what,
And if it says we're supposed to be only getting charged what the water costs, I mean,
these
what,
are,
I mean, somebody could come back, why would they? But somebody could come back and say, well, you guys knew at this point in time, and you
failed to,
failed to correct it.
yeah, so,
Except we're doing the process to correct it now.
so, but if she's basing that based on our rate rationale, it's all based on increases and not decreases, so I have no problem.
So do we need a motion or?
We do need a motion.
I mean,
Wait,
get ready.
No.
when are we doing effective date though?
immediately.
Can we do it effective tomorrow?
We're in the middle of water,
Yes, we wanna do it in the middle.
so
So
you
your
want
rate's
to,
gonna be on the 19th, right? This
we
month.
want to make it retroactive to the last reading, is what you're saying.
Mm-hmm.
You can just, I believe we are looking for a motion to approve the ordinance before you, making it effective at the time of your vote.
Okay,
I make that motion.
I second it.
all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed?
I'm gonna say opposed to that because I find some difficulty in enacting it. And I think it could potentially create a real headache for staff. Because you're talking about making it effective today. So from the 20th to today, now are the staff gonna have to calculate the difference?
No, I already just clarified
So
that
you're
with
making
you.
it retroactive then to the last meter reading?
Yeah,
Okay, so that wasn't in the way the ordinance was
It's in
stated.
but it's in the motion.
I think from a practical point, we are now gonna take this rate sheet that's been approved, and we're gonna put into the computer all of the correct rates for ag and domestic prior to the meter reading, which is not gonna happen for another week and a half or 2 weeks. And once that happens, then it'll get uploaded and all the accounts are gonna be the new rates will be attributed to.
said aye. There was no opposed, motion carried. Okay.
To the board, I do, if the board's interested, we are looking at, using, a mail house to process all of our bills and everything. So one of the little tests they're in Anderson, trying to use as much local as we can. One little test we thought was, let's give them all our addresses and send a postcard and see how it goes, right? So this could be one other use of that. We're also thinking about just trying them this month, to see how it goes. We will put in the newsletter, we'll do it. My suggestion, if it's okay, we'll start drafting that newsletter now and send it to all of you to provide edits if you think you can come up with flashier words. Now, I will just say, we've reduced the flashiness of the newsletter over the last 6 months since I've been here, because when we print with color, it costs us more.
Oh, yes.
And so, undiscovered by the previous folks in 2022, I don't think they realized it, we said, we actually had the last remaining thing with color on our newsletter was in red meter reading dates. That was it. And that was costing us an extra 22 cents per sheet of paper.
Oh,
Wow.
my
Yes.
goodness gracious.
Times.
I like to say money.
That's worse than the pants.
See, now we can afford to fix that.
Check, Mike, check, did you get that?
I haven't done it already.
Did you get that on the recording?
All right, we're all good? Meeting adjourned. See you guys on the 21st.